Welcome to another episode of Valeo Health Podcast. Today, we have our new Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Anant, with us in the studio, and I look forward to introducing him to our followers and customers. Dr. Anant, welcome to another episode of Valeo Health.
Thank you, Nadine. It's wonderful to be here with you today.
Thank you. So I would like us to first learn more about you. So what's your background and what really brought you to this field of longevity?
Well, thank you once again for having me. And I'm so happy to be sharing more about myself to your audience. And my hope is that today we'll have a chance to learn some interesting things about this new and exciting field that we call longevity.
Yes.
To start with my background, I'm an internal medicine physician by training, but I've had a rather unconventional path, shall we say, through my education and work experience. I guess the best way to start is when I was in college, when I knew I wanted to be a physician, but I always knew that I wanted to do something in addition to seeing patients so that I could have a broader impact on people outside of the clinic. And initially I thought that that thing was going to be research. So I actually spent a lot of time in college as an undergraduate doing molecular biology research. I'm talking like at the bench, pipetting, doing really basic type of research. And my goal was to be an MD, PhD, running my own lab and seeing patients and working in a field that we now call systems biology, where we study the interaction of different signaling pathways and understanding how that affects health. And so this is what I thought I wanted to do. But when I went through the application process for the MD, PhD programs, I realized that I wasn't sure that I wanted to go down this academic path. I'm sure you or your audience may understand some of the challenges with the academic environments. It's hard to get paid.
So is this more like for clinical trials? For example, like how do you go through a clinical trial to get a medicine out?
Yes. So researchers, what I had anticipated doing back then was to be a part of the discovery process.
Okay.
So it can be clinical trials. It can even be work that is happening before that, to discover new drugs that we can figure out what we should put in a clinical trial to begin with. And so I had this real passion for science and for cell signaling, cell biology, and understanding things from the ground up, so to speak. And you'll understand why this is relevant because it kind of connects back to where longevity medicine is today. But I decided, as I mentioned, not to pursue this MD, PhD program because I saw these challenges with academia. I ended up just going to medical school as a kind of a plain vanilla MD. And at the time, there was this new thing called an MD MBA, which was a joint degree, a medical degree and business degree, which I was doing at Harvard. And I thought an MBA I thought that was a great way to figure out what this other thing was going to be. To be honest with you, I didn't exactly know what I was going to do with an MBA. It just seemed kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I did this MD MBA program, and during that time, I became really interested in technology. This is around 2010, 2011. This is when the iPhone was really new, and we had all this excitement about smartphones being the thing that would transform healthcare and mobile technology. And so I actually decided, after I finished my residency, I want to work in digital health.
Okay.
And so I finished my residency in internal medicine, and then I joined a company called Valeo Health.
And residency in internal medicine is how many years?
3 years.
3 years,
in the United States.
Okay.
And so I joined a company called Valeo Health, which was a healthcare technology company that was focused on delivering nutritional treatments for people with type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
And I actually joined that company as a product manager. So I was very much on the technology side, but I was working in a healthcare company. So I was taking everything I'd learned as a physician to build better technology.
Yeah.
And so here I was working very closely with engineers. I was helping to build software. I was running teams, managing teams. And it was just a really great experience for me, A, to understand technology and how it's built, but B, also just how to manage, how to operate, how to scale. I had a chance to work with some really outstanding leaders at Verda. And so I joined that company when it was just about 30 or 40 people.
Yeah.
And by the time I left, it was a multi-billion-dollar company. And so it was an amazing experience to see that. I think that anyone who wants to work in the startup world or the corporate world should at some point see a journey like that.
Yeah,
See
definitely.
what good looks like, see what success looks like. There's so much that you pick up from that.
See what the early signs look like also, when
Exactly.
you start the building. And when did longevity come?
Yes, so great question. So I've talked about the thread of science, which I talked about before. Then we had this thread of technology at Virta. And so it was towards the end of my time at Virta that I became really interested in this field of longevity. And I think that for myself, like for many people, this interest came from something very personal.
Yeah.
So we found out that in our families, both my wife's family as well as my own, that we have 2 different hereditary cancer syndromes that run in our families. And so this was a big shock for us.
And you found out because you tested for it or by coincidence?
So
or how did it come?
It happened kind of in succession. So my wife's now late mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And so that prompted some genetic testing to happen on that side. And then my father, who is still alive, was diagnosed with a very rare skin cancer.
Okay.
And I will say at the outset that, as it turns out, neither me nor my wife are carriers for this, so we feel very lucky. But certainly when we were going through that process, we were very uncertain about what this would mean for us, for our children. And we, in any case, had family members who were affected. And so this prompted me to ask the hard question of what can I do to influence the impact of this?
Yeah.
And I found that my medical training, despite having done it at really amazing places, working with some of the smartest doctors and scientists in the world, didn't give me very much in the way of answers when it came to things like, what can I do to prevent something?
Yeah.
How can I have more control over my future? It was mostly just, hey, if you ever have a problem, here's what you do. But how do you prevent that problem from happening in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I kind of dove into this field that we now call longevity medicine out of personal interest. And what I found was this approach to medicine that was not really talked about in conventional training situations in the hospitals.
I mean, this is what I find interesting, right? Because I think longevity as a word has now turned to something trending. I mean, you have longevity experts that do not have a background to be a longevity expert. And so what makes a longevity expert is then the question you ask yourself. I think some medical training or an MD training, this is my own opinion, but there might be some definition for what makes a longevity medicine expert. But some MD training is required additionally to that, no?
I think it's a good question. And I think the reality is that there is no definition of what a longevity doctor or expert is. I think people can call themselves that if they want.
Yes.
At some point, we might have formal certification bodies. There are people trying to make that happen. I think until we get to that point, I think for a prospective patient, I think the most important thing to consider, I mean, I do think it is helpful, especially if they plan to prescribe or order tests. I do think that having medical training is important, if not necessary. In most countries, you cannot prescribe or order tests unless you have an MD. So by definition, somebody who isn't an MD is going to be limited in their toolkit. But I think the most important characteristic, honestly, is less so the training and more so the mindset.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people who are longevity practitioners to be curious and to have a growth mindset and to always be trying to learn, because this field is so young and it's changing all the time, that if you're somebody who likes to learn something once and be set in your ways, this is not the field for you.
Yeah,
I think you have to be constantly learning. You have to be flexible too. And this is something where I'll say, unfortunately, a lot of the so-called influencers that we see in the wellness and longevity space, I think are lacking in this regard, because many of them are not flexible.
Yeah.
They pick something that they want to push and they keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. They become known as like the keto guy or like the the microbiome woman, and they never come off that point.
Yeah.
Even if new data comes out. So I think that being curious, being flexible, being open-minded is super important. And I think that's something that I would certainly look at if I was trying to find a practitioner to work with.
Definitely, I completely agree with you. And I think this is also a very different mindset than what the medical world provides, right? In the medical world, and this is how we grew up. You go to a hospital if you're sick. You don't go before. You don't take care of yourself before. When you get sick, you go to a hospital, you speak to a doctor, he or she gives you a protocol, you follow it, or you might follow it 50%, or you might not follow it at all, and you come back home and you expect the best. In longevity, as you said, it's much more flexible. Things change. We went from ice bath being very good to ice bath might not be very good for women women and hormonal balance. But isn't this difficult for somebody who's basically doing changes in their lifestyle when it comes to longevity? Thinking that, okay, it might be good for you now, but further research might show not. I'm just thinking, I know this is something we were talking about, like human mindset, right? Like would they do something thinking it might actually then more research might come out that it's not very good for you?
Yeah, I think that is a tough problem. I think the first issue that I'll point out is this idea that people have that something is good or bad, right?
Very nice.
That does not reflect biological reality. And I think this happens because of how, again, these influencers communicate this information. They communicate in absolutes because that's all a Instagram reel allows them the time to do.
What do you mean by biological reality?
By biological reality, I mean that when you look at how our cells, which are, governed by the laws of biology, respond to different interventions like sauna or ice bath, what we see is that there is an effect for sure, but is that effect good or bad? Depends on the context. It depends on lots and lots of different things. And so to go onto an Instagram reel or a TikTok, whatever those are called, and to say in 15 seconds, yes, this is good or yes, this is bad, is just not reflective of reality. Because in biology, there's so many other factors that dictate whether or not something works.
So it's more personalization and you as a person understanding your body.
Yes, I think it's understanding how your biology works uniquely, and ideally working with a practitioner who can help you navigate that, because it is very hard to do that on your own.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you need guidance, but you need to be also very self-aware of what works and what doesn't.
Yes, absolutely.
If we go into maybe GLP-1 is also one of the reasons why longevity now became a big subject, weight loss. So, as we were saying that before, 30% of the population here is either obese or has, diabetes or pre-diabetes. So we are talking about a young population in the Middle East that requires a lot of hand-holding when it comes to improving their health, losing weight management. GLP-1, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think GLP-1s have so much promise for improving health, not just here in this region, but really globally.
Okay.
And I will say that this region in particular can benefit quite uniquely and quite especially from GLP-1s because of some of the unique challenges that are faced here. Now, I live in the United States, and I will say that a lot of the challenges that exist here are actually quite similar to what we have going on there. And so I've seen what GLP-1s can do when they are implemented in a broad population. And what we've noticed is that not only do people lose weight and improve their metabolic health, but other things seem to get better too. Their blood pressure gets lower, their sleep improves. If they have joint diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, those get better. Their kidney health improves. They have a lower risk of...
It sounds like the wonder drug.
I mean, they are the closest thing to a wonder drug that we've ever seen in our lifetimes.
Is it, I know that in research, the cause and effect is very important. Do you think it's the weight loss that's bringing all these benefits, or is the actual GLP-1 medicine, or both together?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think originally what people thought was that it was primarily the weight loss. And I will just back up and say that weight loss is such a complicated thing, right? Like on some level, I wonder,
it's not calorie in, calorie out.
Yeah, like why do we want to, it's almost like we want to discount the impact of these drugs in some way by saying it's just because of weight loss. Like I don't sometimes I question, like, why do we want to say that? Like, even if it is because of weight loss, is it as though weight loss is so easy to do? It's clearly not, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise we wouldn't need these things to begin with. So
100%.
how much of this is attributable to weight loss versus not? I think on some level is a little bit of an academic question. But setting that aside, I think that we do now know that there's quite a bit that's going on here that does not have to do with the loss of excess adipose tissue, which is what I'm kind of defining as weight loss,
yeah.
right? For example, there was an article that came out just a couple of weeks ago that talked about the effects of GLP-1s in the brain. I think that's one of the things that's really interesting is that we're now learning that so much of the effect of GLP-1s is not driven by what they're doing in the gut or at the pancreas or even in the adipose tissue, but actually what's happening in the brain. And then how the brain then activates all these different programs throughout the body that then allow these things to happen. And so what was demonstrated in this paper is that GLP-1s activate specific receptors in the back part of the brain that then in turn ask your cells or have your cells preferentially switch to burning fat, which is amazing if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
It's basically a metabolic program that is being executed by the brain, which is amazing.
And the idea of GLP-1 doing this is that if you don't do it, or for some people, if they don't take the GLP-1, the message is actually different when it comes to metabolic.
So for many people who have problems with metabolism, they are unable to efficiently metabolize fat. And so as a result, weight loss is hard, and they have a whole bunch of other issues related to energy production.
So the message going from your brain to your cells could be not prone for weight loss, basically.
Potentially. I mean, I would encourage people to read this paper, but essentially it seems like these neurons in the brain are essential for this message to be communicated. And we know that GLP-1s activate these neurons in this very unique way. And so this is just a piece of the puzzle that I think is emerging around how GLP-1s are really improving our biology in quite fundamental and profound ways.
And so would you say, and I think, this goes to every little girl or little boy that since they were young trying to lose weight and couldn't, and, they always felt like it was because they were not disciplined enough. Your friend is disciplined enough to lose weight, but you're not. I mean, I think I was a bit of a chubby kid, so I can imagine I had that. I can understand the pressures of that. But would you say then obesity is a disease?
Well, on some level, I would turn the question back to you and say, what is a disease, really?
Okay.
And I think that the way I will answer this is by saying, I think as we go deeper and deeper into the future of understanding how our bodies work and what health is, we will discover that everything really is a function of biology. So let me come back to a word you use, discipline.
Yeah.
What is discipline really?
Yeah.
Discipline is not something that comes out of nowhere. It arises because of how the biochemistry in your neurons, in your brain is working, right? So if you say to somebody you don't have discipline or you don't have willpower, that is because there is a real biological deficit that exists.
No Middle Eastern parent would agree to that.
Right. So I'm not practically speaking.
Yeah, I know, but I think we both come from cultures where our parents will be like, no, you cannot blame your biology.
I completely understand. I think
but I mean, it's good to understand it. I completely agree.
I think I completely recognize that is not a paradigm that I think people are ready to accept today, but I do believe it will be accepted at some point in the future. I can't say when, but I think right now, having that awareness of this reality is useful because I think it helps us understand why tools like GLP-1s can be beneficial.
Yeah. I mean, now thinking about GLP-1, it was actually, people have been taking GLP-1 for diabetes since 2005, if I'm correct. Yes. And why now has the story changed?
That's a great question. And I think it really is a good example of how developments in technology sometimes happen very gradually, and then they suddenly hit a point where an inflection happens, and
100%.
it just and so GLP-1s have been around for close to 2 decades now. It's taken us a while to improve the biological activity of these therapies. There's been a lot of research that's gone into them. I mean, they were first proposed actually originally as therapies to prevent neurodegenerative disease back in the early 90s.
What does it mean?
Like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's,
wow.
things like that. And actually, we're now seeing that, in fact,
exactly.
they do seem to
There was a research
reduce
out
the
about
risk.
Alzheimer's, right?
Yes. So it's all come full circle. But it's taken us a while to perfect the bioengineering of these therapies, to get them to be stable enough, to be potent enough.
So is the question that we, usually get is, because in people's mindset is that GLP-1 just became popular or just got approved. So we don't know what would be the long-term side effects.
Yeah. So that reminds me, just to make a parallel, it's a little bit like AI and large language models, right? Like people feel like these things just got discovered like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They've actually been around and in development for over a decade. It's just that only in 2022 or 2023 did they cross an inflection point of being good enough, and now they're
actually going to the masses,
right?
In
exactly,
a way, being available to the masses.
And so, coming back to your question, like we do have extensive data on GLP-1s, and their safety certainly, like over a long-term setting. But I think I feel like we sometimes have too much of a mindset of what are the risks and what are the dangers, and I think we sometimes ignore all the benefits. And if you
100%.
just check if you do a simple research review, or like a PubMed, go to PubMed, which is a great research review site, and you just type in GLP-1s, it is just stunning how many different indications these seem to have for benefiting human health. And I've kind of listed these before, but I don't think we've ever seen any kind of intervention do this aside from exercise, nutrition, and sleep, which still remain the most important behaviors for us to optimize. I would always tell people, like, before you consider taking a GLP-1 or microdosing a GLP-1 or whatever you're doing with a GLP-1, please make sure that you've invested in those behaviors.
Yes.
But setting that aside, there is nothing else that we've seen in our lifetimes that comes close to having this broad-based of a positive biological effect.
And we talk about the biological impact or the good side effects from a health perspective, but it's also, we've seen it with our customers, it's changed people's lives.
Yes.
When you have been all your life extremely obese, be it vacations, be it swimming, be it going and exercising, be it running with your kids, be it actually feeling that you have the opportunity to do things. That's also, you feel the opportunity of creating another life for yourself.
Yes, that is.
And all this has positive effects.
Yes, that is such a great point. And I think I want to come back to what I just said, which was, yes, it's true that the lifestyle behaviors are the foundation.
Yes.
But it can be hard to do those things, right? To have the energy and motivation and discipline to exercise, to sleep at the right time, to eat the right foods. Again, those things don't come out of nowhere. And sometimes people's brain chemistry is so messed up due to all the different things that are going on in the food that we eat and the stress that we all have, that it's so hard for them to overcome that.
Yeah.
Like, you can listen to some influencer say, hey man, all you got to do is wake up and meditate, and then, go look at the sun, and then go eat a high protein breakfast. Like, easy to talk about, very hard to do in practice.
Yeah.
And what GLP-1s do is they can kind of move your biology in such a way that it makes those things easier to do.
100%.
How many people have you heard who notice that when they take GLP-1s, certain addictions improve, like whether it's smoking or sometimes even smartphone use, and think about what that then opens up. They can now use that time to exercise.
Exactly.
or
But
to
you
eat
need to make that. I mean, we've seen
Yes.
it and we've spoken about this because we have the GLP-1 program. Definitely, if you think of like two scenarios of customers that took it. One customer that took the GLP-1, their appetite was less, they ate less, they lost the weight, but haven't done any mindset of lifestyle
Yes.
changes. Once they reach their goal of weight and they stop the GLP-1 and go back to their usual normal lifestyle, the weight does come back.
Yes. I do think it's so important that when people take these, they have to be given the right coaching.
Yeah.
And the right
Because then imagine if you've done the GLP-1 journey and you stop it and then you go back and
Yes,
gain the weight. I mean,
yes.
that's also emotionally
yes.
so heavy on the person. So what we've seen is the people that change their lifestyle, change their, do fitness. And the fitness doesn't mean you need to run a marathon. And literally take a short walk, start moving slowly. And then when you stop the GLP-1, then you've actually changed your lifestyle. But what you were mentioning, and I think what's very important, is the lifestyle change becomes easier.
Yes, exactly. The way I like to frame it to patients is that the GLP-1s will create a window of opportunity for you to form new and better habits.
Yeah, 100%.
And so that window is going to open, but you need to step through it. You
Yeah.
need to take the action. It is not enough for that window just to be open and you magically are going to start doing these things. You have to decide to do that.
Yeah.
This will make it easier for you to decide to do it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And we've seen it. And now we've spoken about GLP-1 when it comes to weight management. There is more talk happening about microdosing, for example. I know the research around it is still very minimal, but what's your take on microdosing?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I've spoken already about all these different benefits that GLP-1s seem to have that are outside of losing weight and improving metabolic health, right? Just to list them again, we have improvements to inflammation, and as a result, improvements to inflammatory disorders like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis. Even I saw one last week on mast cell activation syndrome, which is a really terrible inflammatory disease that some people have.
Wow.
We see a reduction of cardiovascular events, which are still the biggest cause of disease and death in the world. Improvements to kidney disease, improvements to blood pressure.
It's actually the top reason here, cardiovascular.
Yes. So that improves. We're even seeing some signals around cancer risk being lower. So just really across the board.
Do you feel the medical world is ready to
It's a very good question. I don't know.
I don't. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't really expect you. I don't think anybody knows, but I would love you to know your opinion.
When you consider the implications of this, especially, there are now additional GLP-1s in the pipeline at different pharmaceutical companies. This is the biggest category by far. If you go to any kind of major pharmaceutical conference these days, it's all about GLP-1s and GLP-1 pipelines.
Yeah.
So we are going to see a parade of increasingly better agents come out in the next 3 to 4 years.
The tablet one is coming soon.
There's an oral one coming.
Yeah.
There's formulations that have other activators, right? Like right now we have a GLP-1 and a GIP-1, which is tirzepatide. And then we're going to have a triple agonist, which is called retatrutide, which is also going to activate glucagon, which is useful to boost your metabolic rate.
But do all these have the same role?
They all, it depends. Some of them are oral, some of them are injectable. They're all trying to take the biology of GLP-1s and synergize with it. So there's actually an interesting one that's in an earlier phase of development that's trying to see if we can also stimulate muscle growth. So IGF-1 or insulin-like growth factor, which is a peptide that helps to stimulate muscle. We're trying to see if we can combine that with a GLP-1 to kind of get a really positive
lose fat,
effect.
but also because that's one of the side effects, but gain muscle.
Well, let me just clarify this idea that people lose muscle on GLP-1s. GLP-1s do not cause muscle loss. They do not.
Okay.
Directly, right? If you look at the studies that have looked at what happens to mice or even humans who are given GLP-1s and they look exactly at what happens to muscle, GLP-1s actually boost muscle protein synthesis and are protective to muscle. So then you might ask, why does muscle end up getting lost? Well, it's because of what we talked about earlier. It's because people are not given the right guidance on what to do after they start taking a GLP-1. So just thinking through it, right? A GLP-1 is going to suppress your appetite.
Yes.
And if you do not change what you're eating, if you just continue eating the same things that you were eating before that are not very nutrient dense and don't have enough protein, when you then reduce that, you're going to make that problem even worse.
Yeah.
Another thing that can happen with GLP-1s, especially early on, is that it can reduce your energy level temporarily. It usually goes away within a few weeks. But if people are not told, like, hey, you need to go out and exercise, if they don't do that, they don't resistance train, then you will lose.
So the muscle loss actually happens
secondary
because you're not eating the right nutrition.
Yes,
it's not because you're taking GLP-1.
No, absolutely not.
Okay,
and it drives me crazy to see people continue to believe this and talk about it because it's just not true.
What about the stomach paralysis one they mentioned?
Yeah, so I think another big issue with GLP-1s is that I have a belief that we are going way too high on the doses.
Yes. A lot of people actually do it without a doctor consultation and decide if I go a high dose, then I will lose faster.
Yes. I think that in my experience, and I think that in the experience of other practitioners, you can go a really long way with a very relatively low dose. And this is coming back to the microdosing point. But
exactly.
In my experience, a lot of the issues with, delayed gastric emptying or gastroparesis, which is what you were talking about, basically the stomach not being able to move properly, that generally happens when people go up way too high, way too fast.
We've seen it, we've seen customers come to us before talking to one of our doctors and be like, I have all these side effects. And we realize they've put themselves on the high dose from the beginning.
I think sometimes people are just not given the right support.
Yeah.
And as a result, they don't have the right expectations. They get impatient. They feel like the weight should just be melting off, and they feel the need to escalate the dose.
Yeah.
And that's how you run into problems.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And if we go back to microdosing, so what does microdosing mean, and who are currently microdosing?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, GLP-1s have this remarkable array of benefits.
Yeah.
And those benefits are applicable to pretty much everyone, right? Like all of us could benefit from lowering inflammation. Right?
Especially with the, as you said, all the toxins that are
right,
around.
exactly. So all of us can benefit from these things. And so the question is, the way in which we know how to dose GLP-1s was driven by clinical trials that were engineered to cause people to lose weight. And so in order to achieve those same benefits without losing weight, requires us to think differently about dosing. And that's where this microdosing concept comes in, which is, it's this idea that like, hey, perhaps we can take GLP-1s at a lower dose than people who want to lose weight do, and perhaps we'll then get some of the same benefits.
And is this seen as something where as we said, longevity, right? We have people that have diabetes, weight management, take it. Now you have also people that are into longevity that want to live longer, longer health span than a lifespan. So will GLP-1 microdosing be part of the longevity protocols?
I will caveat this by saying that we don't know the right way to microdose a GLP-1. Or stated another way, we don't know the right way to dose a GLP-1 for general health benefit. We don't know. With all that being said, there are a number of doctors, many of whom are colleagues of mine, who are doing this with willing patients who understand what the unknown nature of this. And what we're essentially doing is giving people a lower dose of a GLP-1, like semaglutide or tirzepatide. And we're doing it not to lose weight, but we're doing it to help them achieve a general health benefit. And what people are doing really varies. Some people do the introductory dose, for tirzepatide, that's like 2.5 milligrams. they'll do that maybe every other week. Some people will cut that in half and do it weekly. Some people will cut it in even smaller pieces and do it 3 times a week. So it really varies. But what I can say is that, and this is all anecdotal, we don't have like a study, but like it does seem like quite often that even at these lower doses, we do see in the biomarkers improvements to, for example, C-reactive protein, which is reflective of inflammation. We see improvements to A1C. We see improvements to lipids. We see all these indications that these are still having a
Which
profound
are metabolic
biological...
biomarkers that impact,
Yes. So we do seem to think that these are still going to have a beneficial biological effect, even at a lower dose.
And I find it's a very, very, very exciting time to be, alive, and especially to be into longevity. And I would say, if we look at the world in 5 years, and I think you said something that was very interesting. People should stop asking people their age. And we should ask, like, the future is actually you ask somebody, how old do you feel? Because actually your biological age will eventually mean very little.
Yes, your chronological age.
Your chronological age.
Yes,
chronological age.
So yeah, this is a very interesting point, and I think this might be interesting for the audience to think about, which is that I would submit to you that unless you are a child or somebody who is in school, in which case your age needs to be known for kind of legal reasons or for
So you're not underage.
developmental reasons, that you should not disclose your age at all, because there's no reason for anyone to know. And in fact, one of the big issues that we have to overcome with longevity is not how we live longer. That is a big challenge, to be sure. But there is another psychological challenge that we all have, which is this concept of ageism, right? When we hear, all of us, this is everyone, it's hardwired into us. When we hear this person is 50, this person is 40, this person is 30, we automatically get a bunch of assumptions 100%. About what they're capable of, who they are, what they like, what they can do. And that, I believe, we need to get rid of. We have to get rid of it entirely. And so if we now have tools to help ourselves stay healthier for longer, to feel and act and think biologically younger, like you can be 45 years old and think and act and be biologically like a 25-year-old. In that circumstance, why should you have to disclose that you're 45 years old? It should not matter. All that should matter is what you know, how you think, what you've done. So I actually posted about this recently, but like I have personally taken out all information about when I graduated, for example, from college and high school, which is information that people can use to work out my age. And I've also basically taken out any work history beyond the last 10 years, which I think even professionally, anything that you've done more than 10 years ago is not really relevant to you anyway.
I think for somebody who likes to invest in their health and wellness and who's in this, it's very empowering. It's really very empowering because you're not anymore, your chronological age. It's actually how much you've invested in yourself and taking care of yourself. And that's what defines your age.
Right, exactly.
And so if we look at, the world also of longevity, you have stem cells, exosomes, peptides, every day you have a new trend that's coming out. If you would think of 3 tools that will be one of the, long-term tools that would stay in longevity, what would you bet on?
Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, GLP-1s.
Yeah, GLP-1.
Right? We already set that one aside. I think there's quite a bit more line of sight with that one because it's an approved drug. We have tons of data on them now, and we have an exciting pipeline. So I think that's number one.
Definitely.
I do think that regenerative medicine, and in particular stem cells, PRP being platelet-rich plasma, I think these therapies are going to become mainstays of longevity medicine. I think you'll see it start with joints and kind of musculoskeletal work. And then I think there's potential to expand beyond that. But I think that there's actually already quite a bit of experience. It just has all happened kind of outside of the formal medical setting.
Yes.
with using stem cells for these applications, and the results have been quite positive.
But it's usually very expensive and done
Very
in a different
expensive and
clinic.
done
Yeah.
in jurisdictions where that is allowed. And
Do you think this would become more mainstream?
I think it will. I think what needs to happen is that different governments need to come up with frameworks to allow it, right? So the United States has just started to do this. In the state of Florida, they've kind of released a framework. Japan has actually had a framework for a while now.
Okay.
And so other countries are now looking at this. I do think this is going to be a big paradigm.
Okay. And the third one?
And so I think number 3, and this one might be a little bit of an open-ended one, but I do think that artificial intelligence is going to unlock so much in the way of discovery that they're almost, it'd almost be like saying there are things that we don't even know that will come to the fore that relate to our health that we can now apply because we have these amazing tools that can help us understand things. And so maybe stated another way, I would say that testing and diagnostic testing is going to become extremely robust and personalized. And I think what we're seeing right now with companies like Function and Superpower and US-based companies, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. These are actually, when you look at it, fairly basic tests.
It's what you do with the results.
The actionability is important, but there are even more advanced tests that are currently mostly in the research domain that give us much more information about cells and cell signaling and kind of the ground truth of biology. This is things like genomic testing, metabolomic testing, proteomic testing. These things will become accessible to customers, and this will unlock a level of personalization that is an order of magnitude beyond what we have right now. And so one way to think about this is that when we can get better data, we don't necessarily need more tools, right? Like we just need to figure out which tool to use when and how much and for how long.
And you mentioned that AI is actually what will help us do that.
And I think AI will help us manage these extremely large data sets.
I mean, one of the questions once, and I did want to, delve also into AI, was people, I got the question because I'm in healthcare, in health tech, like, will AI, replace doctors? Will AI replace the healthcare? I said healthcare as as an industry and as a problem is so huge. Is that actually AI maybe is one of the industries, that healthcare will only help it solve its problems because we couldn't solve it without AI. So I think it will only superpower it than basically replace it, I would say. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, do you think AI will, again, when you say will make people more powerful? Or will AI make people more complacent, just basically lazier and just, use their brains less, use their analytics less? Where are we going with this? Or can actually a person decide where they want to go?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I can't say I know the answer, but I can share at least how I'm thinking about it. I think AI, and specifically when I say AI, I mean the current paradigm of large language models, has the ability to help us reach even higher into our potential.
Very nice.
If we use them in that way. Equally, if we don't, there is a potential for these tools to dull our cognitive abilities, to dull what makes us unique, and for us to become much less interesting as a society and as people. I think the choice is still up to us. It's up to governments. It's up to frankly, the companies that are developing this to some extent, which is kind of scary to think about. But, look, this is always true whenever you have new technologies. The people developing it do hold a lot of power. And so I think as individuals, I think when we use technology like this, we should adopt the mindset of how can I use this to make myself even more dynamic? Or how can I use this to bring out those elements of me that make me special? Which I know this sounds very abstract, but some of that requires you to self-reflect and think about, like, what are you really good at? What are the things that you really enjoy doing? What's your purpose? And how can you use a tool like AI to unlock that? So maybe you use it to take care of everything else that is not the thing that you really love.
Yeah.
So that you then focus on the thing that you really love, right?
And you mentioned something about like diagnostics, and you can actually learn a lot about your own health data, right? And then a lot of people first didn't know how to access those diagnostics, and this is why you have the Functional Health, or you have the Valeo in UAE, Saudi. But also, what do you do with that data, and how do you analyze it? I mean, before I would imagine when you have doctors in the medical world will not be sitting analyzing data of a person that might get sick. He'll be like, he or she will be like, I need to deal with people that are sick, you know. But now actually, this large language model, AI, helps us take this data and create enough actionable actions for people to take. But then us as humans, we need to take those actions and actually take care of us and do all of this. So it's always a mix between, I would say, human and AI.
Yeah. So I think that we know already that large language models can help us considerably on the side of analysis, right?
Yeah.
They can, and we already see this in benchmarks, right? AIs alone outperform AIs plus doctors in some benchmarks. I'm not saying that means that AIs are going to replace doctors, but it does demonstrate the power of these tools to do analysis, right? And it makes sense. Like, they can see more angles.
But it depends what you prompted or what data you gave it.
It does depend on things like that, but they do have more capacity to consider more possibilities when it comes to a data set. So I think they can definitely help with that. But as you mentioned, right, like, even if we do get an amazing analysis of somebody's data and we're able to create a really high quality plan that's grounded in the science, that plan needs to be executed.
Exactly.
And I think at least today, that's where I do think we need humans. Humans really excel at creating accountability and problem solving and troubleshooting in ways that are applicable to people's daily lives.
But you also have, I guess, including tech, right? Integrating your wearable, checking at all times how you're doing, which could be also very stressful, I would say.
Yes. I will say, though, that we don't know yet, because these people are too young, how people who are currently either, I would just say, like 16 years and younger, right? People who are growing up with AI being just a part of their lives, how will they respond to the idea of an AI being not just their data analysis tool, not just the thing that creates their plan, but also the thing that maybe keeps them accountable? Because we can have AI health coaches.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think that these things will be super potent for most of the people who need help today, just because of how I think most of us respond to behavior change or how we make changes. But I think it's an open question as to how the younger generations will respond to that. I don't think we know.
What we know is that how our grandparents or parents experience healthcare and expected from healthcare and followed healthcare will be completely different. How the younger generations, like the current or the healthcare that our parents and grandparents experience, cannot be the same healthcare the younger generation experiences. This is definitely, be it from digital health, convenience, proactiveness, and that's when you need AI basically to provide all of this. I mean, you're growing with a generation that is used to ordering a cab or fast food and hopefully healthy food, at the click of a button.
Hopefully, yeah.
So, and you are much more aware about, I think, your health and wellness from a younger generation. I don't know, do you see the younger generation being more curious about it?
I do think I think Generation Z, Gen Z, is probably the cohort that is most relevant to this consideration. And I do see many of them taking wellness and things like mental health more seriously than I certainly remember. I mean, I'm a millennial. Like, I don't think that we took it nearly as seriously. There was even this mindset. I remember I had a friend who had a belief that I think is representative of what a lot of people think or thought, which is that you can do whatever you want until you turn 35. Like, you're kind of invincible until 35. Doesn't matter what you do to your body.
That's why we don't share our age anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm already giving myself away to some extent. But I think that our younger people actually are thinking about it differently. For example, like the rates of alcohol use are way down.
Yeah.
Among
Cigarettes
Generation
also.
Z. Cigarettes. I think there's other social problems that I think this generation has, which may
Staying
the
on your phone,
smartphones and the lack of in-person interaction, and different mental health disorders. But I do think that they're thinking about wellness in a useful way.
Yeah. Perfect. Dr. Anant, thank you so much. And I look forward to more episodes with you.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.